morning. Happy Monday. Welcome to Power Talk. I'm your host, Jean Adrienne, and every week I bring you amazing information from amazing authors so that you can raise your consciousness, increase your vibration, and learn to live life more fully. And boy, today have I got the Mac Daddy of all consciousness authors, and that would be Paul Selig. Paul is a channel and an author from New York City. And he is probably, he's fast becoming one of the best known sources of channeled information that's available today. He's written a good number of books, one of which absolutely changed my life. And of course, you know, I do things funny. I never start with the first book, which was, Paul, what was the name of it?
I Am the Word was the first book.
I Am the Word, yeah. I started with the book of Knowing and Worth, and my life hasn't been the same since I finished that book. So, of course, I rapidly had to read all of them as they've come out, and I have been waiting for the longest time to get my hands on my copy of Book of Freedom, and it's been life-changing as well. It takes it to a whole another level, Paul. Mm-hmm. So let me just introduce you. Paul lives in New York City, and his background was that he was a professor at NYU, and also he's a very noted playwright. But now he devotes his life to assisting all of us by being a channel for the guides and bringing in this information that is helping all of us in this ascension process. So thank you for what you do, Paul.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today.
Oh, my pleasure. And his website is paulselig.com, paulselig.com. And you can go there and find out about all of the different workshops that he does all over, as well as he does a lot of live streams that are really amazing, that can help each of us as we, you know, march down this path. And remember that we're not alone, because we aren't. So, Paul, you know, I've been waiting not very patiently for this book to come out, and it was worth the wait. And I don't even really know where to begin as far as, you know, asking you questions. So I'm going to start by letting you talk about the why behind the Book of Freedom, if you will.
Well, you know, the guides that I work with have been delivering these texts one after the other since 2009, I think, was the first dictation, so about 9 years now. And this is the sixth book that they brought through, and it's the end of a trilogy that they call the Mastery Trilogy, which is actually sort of getting us really ready for where they're taking us next, because they've already dictated the next book, which is pretty mind-blowing to me, where they're taking us. So the Book of Freedom really is where we get to break through the false ceiling of what we have believed have been our limitations, to begin to sort of experience ourselves in manifestation as the true self, or what they call the divine self. It's a book that begins to address where they're going now, which is alchemy, and how manifestation occurs, and how, you know, the consciousness that perceives a world actually claims the world into a higher octave of expression. So it's challenging material, it's exciting stuff, and there's, you know, this energy that comes through with it that informs, you know, hopefully the reader's experience of the book. And that's been the case of all of the books so far. The guides say these texts are energetic transmissions that work directly with the reader and support them in their alignment to this higher octave that they say that they're teaching us from.
Absolutely. And I completely feel that alignment every time I pick the book up. And I have to tell you, your publicist got me a galley copy, I want to say it's 3 months ago, and I only finished it last night because it's so in-depth that I have to process. Sometimes every page, certainly when they say to stop, you know, I stop, but I'm speechless, I think, because it's so profound, and really completely changing.
I'm glad, you know, when the guides say stop now, please, at the end of sections, and those are actually directions from me to shut up, that the dictation's over. And I keep hearing that readers are dutifully putting the book down whenever the guides say, stop now, please. And the book that's coming out in August, because these books are on the unedited transcripts. And we decided with this book to sort of not include the directions for Paul at the very end, which is, for example, stop now, please, and, we'll reconvene in half an hour, which would be for me and not for the reader. So I'm assuming now people are going to panic because they're not being told to stop now, please, because they've gotten so used to it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because I'm so hungry for the information that the temptation is to try to speed read it. And that just doesn't work. I mean, if you look at my book, I've underlined and underlined and underlined, and then I'll go back through it again and I'll use a different color pen because I'm very OCD, I
totally get it. People show up sometimes at workshops with these books with all these colored tabs sticking out of the pages. And, I'm always surprised because, I'm really just the radio that brings through the dictation. I'm not the author of the book, and I'm not a religious scholar, certainly. I mean, that's not my stuff at all. But the books do go in depth, and they are teachings. So they're not page turners, and they're not self-help books that you can sort of digest the simple nugget of an idea that may exist in one chapter. In one chapter, you may be getting 300 things to really work with, informationally. But fortunately, I think at this point that the guides are pretty good teachers. So they do take us on a journey, even if these things couldn't be considered, beach books,
True. Exactly. And, I am somewhat of a religious scholar, and I love how in this book they have taken some of the things that I have studied over the years and given a new meaning to them, especially the thing about making all things new.
Yeah, that's a big teaching. And it's consistent. Even in the book that follows Book of Freedom, they're really nailing that. And the idea, they're teaching what they call it the kingdom. And they say the kingdom is the awareness of the divine in all manifestation. And the one who experiences the kingdom is the one who is aligned to it. But you can't align to that level of consciousness or vibration when you're claiming what has always been, through the language that's been there and through the attachments of history that we've inherited. So they say, you can't lift the evil man to the kingdom as long as you're calling him evil. As long as you do that, you're stuck there in the low vibration with your claim. So this is very much a book about realizing the divine, and that's what you're speaking to here. Behold, I make things new. Is the true self, the divine self, or the Christ itself, who's in perception. And through that perception is actually, they say, in resonance, and that resonance is what is lifting the world.
And they reiterate that in a lot of different ways. And for some people like me, it takes looking at it in different ways to really get it. And I think I really got it this past weekend because I live in Tallahassee, Florida. And, we've been very isolated from the real world. I mean, it's a small college town and not a lot goes on here. But we had a mass shooting this past weekend. And it brought us, into reality of what is and what isn't. And so rather than going into judgment, because I had the blessing of this work, I was able to really stay neutral in all that happened. And I wouldn't have been able to do that 3 months ago.
Yeah. No, it's interesting what happens. I mean, the guides, they don't speak directly to current events. That's not something that I hear them do with any regularity, but they do address the collective and how we're responding to what's in our world. And I was doing a workshop in Calgary, Alberta, a couple of years ago, weekend workshop, and I woke up Sunday morning for the second day of channeling to the news of the Pulse nightclub shootings in Orlando, which was horrific.
Right.
And I thought, well, what are they going to do? What are they going to talk about today? I mean, it's really easy to claim the divine in everybody when everybody's doing what you want them to do, but how do you do it in the face of something so challenging? And they did a whole lecture on it. It's actually up on YouTube. It's called, I think we title it like How to Deal with a disaster, something like that. But it was.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, they're really speaking to this, and it really is the consciousness that perceives anything that's informing it. So to go into agreement with the horror and all of those things is to lower yourself right back down to that level, and you can't change much from that level. You can't lift something. It's not about sugarcoating anything. That's never been this teaching, or spiritual bypassing, as people now call it. It's not about that. But it is about the realization that if there is some force, or the divine, or whatever you want to call it, it must be present. And the inherent divine is what's called forth, even when what is perceived on the surface is catastrophic.
Yeah. And so many thousands of years ago, the Taoists, when they created the yin-yang symbol,
mm-hmm.
it really speaks to that, because even in the blackest black, there's light, and in the lightest light, there's darkness, and I think that was always a really good indicator of what the truth of reality is.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like it to me.
Yeah, exactly. But really, I mean, I think one of the first takeaways that I got from doing the work of this book, and it is work, mm-hmm. But it's necessary work, was the fact that it was important for me to let go of everything that I ever thought I believed, because that was then, and I'm a little bit higher than then now, mm-hmm. or maybe a lot higher, who knows, and it's not relevant anymore, and if I hold on to it, then it just takes me back to where I was.
That's it. I mean, you nailed it. I don't know that I'm able to do it yet, and I know that's what they're teaching, and I find it frustrating, because I get it, and I really get it. They're saying, that we're always sort of dining out on yesterday's leftovers. We're always calling into the present what we expect to be there based on what we've known, at the exclusion of what might be claimed in a higher way. And the idea of letting go of who I think I am, or who I was taught to be, and it's not like, you're negating the ego, but you're realizing who you are beyond the mask, or beyond the structure of the personality self, which mm-hmm. is the inherent divine. They say, the guys say again and again, you can't make anything holy, but you can realize the inherent divinity in it. And the interesting thing is, and they get into this in the Book of Freedom, is when you start claiming the divine in manifestation, the divine in the one I see before me as the what? The physical embodiment of, or expression of the divine, they say, will sing back to you. You can actually feel it. It's a wave of energy that comes back. It's quite palpable.
Yeah, I mean, one of the exercises that they give is to go out in the day and start saying to people, I know who you are in truth. I know what you are in truth. I know how you serve in truth. And I could feel it. I absolutely shifted conversations.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's the nice thing about this stuff, I mean, I've been channeling or doing this work in one form or another since, I started hearing clairaudiently in a group in my early 30s. But I wasn't putting much stock in what the information was that was coming through for quite some time. They didn't really start lecturing through me until about 2008, after I quit smoking and my nervous system opened up and my capacity was increased. But the energy was always present, and I always used to trust the energy, because you can't fake it. It's either there or it's not. And if you're experiencing it in a group, in a collective, then you all have your own experience of the guides or the energy that they bring through, or your own innate field, in its higher resonance. And that's exciting and always has been. So I'm pleased that they continue to come through with this stuff that we can feel and have an experiential relationship to.
And I think that part of that, my thought about this, is that part of that has to do with your keeping your channel clear. Because I think of all of the different people that I've been associated with over the last 20 years, because I guess I opened up to this kind of stuff when I turned 50. And I've watched over time how different channels have allowed their ego to get involved in it. And then I have to move on, because I can't relate to that anymore. And for what I see of you, you don't allow that to happen. That your channel is really, really clear. And I mean, you don't know what's coming through, so how could you get involved in it, Well,
I'm a conscious channel, so I'm hearing the transmission, but I'm hearing it in phrases. And I don't know what the larger idea or gesture is, and I don't know that. And the funny thing is, once I read the transcript, I go, wow, this was really coherent and kind of beautiful and kind of elegant. When I'm dictating, or taking the dictation, I can be aware that the ideas sound really great and that there's a fluidity to the channeling. And I realize sometimes that they're harking back to themes, and these things feel very sort of constructed and built in the lectures or the chapters in the books. But my experience of them is very immediate. And, I continue to say, my job is to take dictation. And I don't think that makes me necessarily more enlightened or advanced or realized than others. And I think that that's a trap. I don't know that what I do, I think that what I do is what I do and how my system gets used or my abilities are present. But, if I had other gifts, I would be using those gifts in other ways. And I think that's the small self that wants to magnify this stuff or make it special. And it's really not, to me, it's just sort of what I show up and do, in spite of myself much of the time, because I'm still somewhat confounded by it.
I know, I love how they chide you. You're not taking that out, are you?
No, I don't edit anything in the body of them. The only thing that was edited from, and this is in the book of the newest book, which is not out till August, which is Realization Beyond the Known. There's the only cut in that book was when they turned to somebody in a workshop in Seattle and asked them to be quiet because they were interrupting the channeling, and they said, and we will not have this included in the text. So and then they went right back to the lecture. But that's it. That's it. And the only other, the things at the very end of the chapters, the guides will say, thank you for your presence, which is the end of their relationship to the reader. And then they'll say to me, stop now, please, or, stop now, please, and we'll reconvene tomorrow, or we'll let you know when we're ready to dictate again. Those things, I think anything that was germane to the reader must stay in the book. But anything that was germane to Paul, or the air conditioning in the room or whatever sort of would detract, we sort of decided it wasn't helpful. It wasn't giving anything to the experience.
Yeah, I was very privileged to be there in Atlanta when you started receiving this next book.
Oh, you were there for that one. That's great.
I was, yeah.
That was a surprise.
Yeah, it was very interesting. That was the first time I'd ever been in a live venue with you. I've done the webinars and I've interviewed you before, but I wasn't really sure how that was going to be. I was wondering, okay, in person, is it going to be distracting because you get the information and you whisper it and then you project it to the audience? And I found that to not be at all. I don't know why I was concerned about it. But yeah, it was really good. And the being with other people in the live interaction of using the material was really profound, to the point that I've actually, here in Tallahassee, I've got a little bitty book club where we started with the book of Knowing and Worth, and just because I wanted to start there because that's where I started. And we're doing the interactive stuff together, and it's really being powerful for us.
Yeah, I think that's what What excites me about the books is that the books are sort of living things that work with the reader. And if you work with the teachings, you seem to get worked with. And it's not a book that you just sit in a chair and read and go, well, that was interesting. It is a book that you can experience.
Yes.
And the guides say that the experience of the books, and I would say working with the exercises, which is, again, brings it into, your tangible experience of consciousness outside of the theoretical is vastly important.
Absolutely. But one of the things that I'm working with now, and it's a bit of a struggle because I have to remember to do it. I'm so used to doing all the other stuff, but is actually claiming myself in the day with the statement, I've come to know myself as I truly am in all my encounters and engagements. I've come to be realized as who and what I am in every instance of my day. And that may not mean a lot to the people who are watching our show today, but it was the culmination, as you can see how far back in the book it is. Yeah. It was a culmination of a lot of other activations and information that is getting me to a place where I can really take ownership of the truth.
You're right. I mean, they're teaching embodiment, or they're not teaching it, or they're bringing us to embodiment would be a better way. I don't know if embodiment can be taught. But it's interesting because I forget when people read me these phrases from the books, I go, wow, that's really interesting. And I should go read that book because I don't remember a lot of it. I do the audio book and I remember it in the studio. And when I'm reading it aloud, I go, oh, wow, listen to that. That's interesting. Or, oh dear, I hope that makes sense to the reader, whatever my reaction is. But the idea of being the true self in all encounters, and sort of acknowledging that that's who you truly are does seem to be where they're taking us. Yeah. And that's my struggle because, I'm throwing a temper tantrum half the time because I want my world to be the way I think it should be. And that's my small self who wants things to cohere to his idea of, who he is and how other people are supposed to interact. It just doesn't work that way.
I'm glad to know I'm not the only one who throws temper tantrums with spirit or the divine, because the two times, I do channel, but that's not what I do. But I've received two powerful pieces of information, one being a healing modality, InnerSpeak, and the second one being the DNA activation cards. And both times I argued and I threw a temper tantrum. Like, don't be taking my livelihood away from me unless you've got something better for me. Darn it, silence. Yeah, so they're very patient, That's
my experience. They told me to quit my teaching job. They don't tell me what to do, but I sort of knew it was time to quit my teaching jobs for a couple of years. And once they showed me, this sort of scene from Mary Poppins where everybody's floating up to the ceiling, I was hanging on to my desk for dear life, not wanting to let go of what I had been doing. And letting go of that was quite liberating and frightening too, and this is now what I do after, 25 years or so as an academic. This is a big change. So
and that's really what we're being taught here is about letting go so that we can be free, because everything we hold on to is like your desk.
Yeah, it is. You're right.
Yeah, so, I think that's the nut of it all. And the book is now released, correct?
The book is out on tomorrow. Today's November 5th. November 6th is the publication date. So I've just seen today that Amazon is shipping the pre-orders. People have been saying, I'm getting my book's in the mail. So I'm hearing that from people.
Yeah, I noticed that because I'm giving a copy of it to a dear friend of mine for her birthday. So I got the shipping thing saying that it was shipping to her. So it'll get there in time for her birthday, which is good.
There, and it's probably, knowing how the world works, it's probably in the bookstores now. If people want to go buy it, they tend to show up when they show up. But the official date is November 6th, yes.
Fantastic. And then the next one, Realizations Beyond the Known, will be in August 2019.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, Paul, thank you so much, because I know you're a very, very busy man. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us today and to share this material, because it is phenomenal. That's just all I can say.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Okay. And stay on with me for just a moment after we get off the air, please.
Mm-hmm.